Shalom and welcome back to Israel with Aline. We are not in a junkyard, we are at the scene of a massacre. We are marking 1 year since the October 7th massacre perpetrated by Hamas terrorists against Israel. Today we're here to tell you a little more about this story. It's going to be a very difficult day, and I invite and ask you to watch until the end so that this story is not forgotten or even worse, denied, because what we're going to see here today are facts, and unfortunately terrible facts. So if you're ready, let's get started. On October 7th, 2023, one of the biggest terrorist attacks in world history took place. The Hamas terrorists entered Israel with the goal of killing, kidnapping, raping, and torturing as many people as possible. And they brutally murdered 1,145 people, including Jews, Christians, Muslims, infants, children, women, and the elderly. No one was safe. They kidnapped 251 people, and of those, 101 are still being held captive. They have been in Hamas's hands for a year now. The youngest of them, Kfir Bibas, was kidnapped when he was only 9 months old, and now he has spent more of his life in Hamas's hands than in his mother's arms. And to show you what happened on that terrible day, October 7th, we return to the south of Israel. We are next to the Gaza Strip. And everything you see around us are the real scenes from the October 7th massacre. And this attack was carried out in an extremely organized way. It took years of planning and millions of dollars invested to make this attack as effective as possible. That's why when the terrorists entered Israel, they didn't want the innocent population to be able to escape. And one of the first things they did wherever they went was destroy the cars. When people saw the terrorists coming and tried to get into their cars, they would go and shoot at the cars. They threw grenades, RPGs, and mainly shot at the front part of the car's engine to stop these people. And that's why when Israel woke up after the nightmare of October 7th, this whole area in the south of Israel near Gaza was a giant cemetery of people and also of the cars they were trying to use to save their lives. And that's why in the days and weeks that followed, Israel went through the kibbutzim, the communities, the roads, the schools, everywhere, and started collecting these cars. And they brought these cars to one single place here in Ruma. What we see here around us are 1,600 cars that were recovered. More than 300 of them are completely burned and destroyed. And know that each of these cars has the story of a person who was trying to save their own life and often also trying to save someone else's life. But unfortunately, some of the people who were in those cars ended up being murdered. And we can see that from the cars themselves. We're going to tell you everything in detail, everyone. But as we walk and you see the markings on the cars, know that each marking has a meaning. And this one, for example, Mezuke, means that they checked and searched for human remains in it. It's not the story we would like to be telling on this day. The October 7th massacre happened on Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah means the day of joy in Hebrew. The day of joy of the Torah, the Bible, is a day when people celebrate the word of God. It is a day when people go to synagogues to celebrate and sing. It was a day of rest for Israel and all its people, and one of the happiest days in the history of Israel, turned into one of the most terrible. This is the largest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. And not only Jews were massacred on that day, Christians, Muslims, and people of other religions were also killed that day. And we have to remember all of them. All of them. And remember that terrorism, really? What is it looking for? That's what it's looking for. This is the terror they want to cause. In Israel, in the United States, in Europe. And also, guys, unfortunately, Brazil is not immune to this. So I really invite you to take this journey with me and learn about the real stories and see the facts written here. Not in stone, but in broken glass, twisted metal, personal belongings. In each car we see, we get a glimpse of who these people were, and there's practically nothing left here. So let's continue our journey. That Saturday was a day of celebration in Israel, as we mentioned. Many families were going out to celebrate, to visit loved ones, and unfortunately we see the remains, the traces of these families wherever we go. Look here, there's a sticker that says baby in car, which in Portuguese would be baby on board. That means this car belonged to a family with small children. Here's another proof of a family going out for a walk on what was a normal day for them. We can see in the back, fallen over, a baby car seat. And in that same car, we can see the window completely destroyed by bullet holes. Also holes here in the hood. And in the car next to it, you can also see that there are shots aimed at both the driver and the passenger. We can see in each car the destruction and this urge to stop them, to kill, and to cause all this suffering. Each vehicle here tells a story, and today we're going to learn about some of those stories. The first one is about this van. This van was leaving the area near the Gaza Strip, heading toward the Dead Sea. It was a group of 13 retired seniors who were going to spend a fun day at the Dead Sea. They were all going there to enjoy a beautiful sunny Saturday. And unfortunately for them, on the way to the Dead Sea, they got 2 flat tires and had to stop by the side of the road. And the terrorists saw these 13 seniors getting out of the van, and they killed them one by one, as well as the driver. No one was left alive here to tell this story. Only the car remains as a witness to this massacre. This attack was organized over years, and the idea was to simultaneously infiltrate thousands of people into Israel to overwhelm the army and emergency services. That's why we saw that in just a few hours, thousands of terrorists infiltrated by air, by sea, but mainly by land. They came in with more than 80 cars. Here we have, guys, not the victims' cars. These 2 cars next to me are cars that the terrorists prepared for this attack and used to enter. And I want to show you the preparation here. Come to the back of the vehicle. They set up the entire back of this Jeep here with mechanisms to use grenade launchers, machine guns, RPGs, different types of assault weapons were placed both in this Jeep and in the Jeep next to it. Look at all this preparation. Everyone, this didn't happen overnight. There were more than 80 of these cars. 2 were brought here, and I also want you to look at the front of the car. Look at these metal bars they put on the front of the car. The idea was to make a kind of barricade because they planned to invade the kibbutzim in this region, which they actually did, and the kibbutzim have fences at the entrance, so they built this here specifically to break down the entrance to the kibbutz, get in, and attack the civilian population. Did they know exactly where the people were? They were extremely prepared. It was discovered that they had maps of the area inside Israel, marking where the schools, daycares, cafeterias, and squares were because they had planned where they were going to attack. The targets were not military targets, but civilian ones. But how did they know where and what those places were like inside? Because Israel, for many, many years, gave work visas to people from Gaza to come and work in Israel, and many of them worked inside the kibbutzim themselves. Unfortunately, a few of those people who came to work did not intend to earn an honest living for their families. Instead, their goal was to be spies for Hamas inside Israel. And one of the most terrible things I saw during everything that was discovered after October 7th, there were the papers they brought in. They had papers written on one side in Arabic and on the other in Hebrew because they had planned what they were going to do with the Israeli population, with men, women, and children. Here on the screen for you as well is one of those papers that was found in the pocket of one of those terrorists. Among the things that were found written in Hebrew were phrases like, "Take off your clothes," "Open your legs," and so many other things. So here we can see that nothing was accidental, everything was planned. So more than 80 of these vehicles entered Israel. We have 2 here and a few more back there. And here on the side we can see a pile of motorcycles. They entered Israel with more than 200 motorcycles. So we can see some of them back there in the background. There's also a gigantic pile of motorcycles, so these were the vehicles they used to enter. And 2 of the motorcycles here, the biggest ones, were actually from Israel. They stole them and used them to advance further and further into the territory. The goal wasn't just to massacre the south of Israel. The goal was to massacre the whole country, and fortunately Israel was able to stop them. But unfortunately, it was too late. For 1,145 people, plus the 251 who were kidnapped. So how did that day happen? They came in with motorcycles, they came in with cars, they started killing, raping, torturing, advancing. Some of them started taking people and kidnapping them back, but not just people. They stole a lot of things here in Israel. I filmed in Niraz, one of the kibbutzim where the massacre happened. I'll leave the video linked if you want to watch it later. But they came in and stole whatever was inside, not just Hamas members, but also civilians, women and children, came in to really steal what was in Israel. We also interviewed a woman who speaks Portuguese from Kibbutz Niros. She said that they even stole the silverware from her house. I mean, they tried to take everything of value besides everything they did to the people. And that's why we see these 2 vehicles here. This was a vehicle that belonged to an elderly man who used it inside the kibbutz to get around. And this kibbutz and this vehicle was found inside the Gaza Strip. That means they came in, stole it, took it into Gaza with no one inside. And when Israel found this vehicle, they brought it back and brought it here because the owner of this vehicle is not here to tell the story. So at least the car is. The same thing happened with this tractor. They simply knew the tractor was worth a lot of money, so they just took it and stole it. And this white car we're seeing here, it was also taken to Gaza, but unfortunately it wasn't just the car that was taken. This car belonged to Kit and Viva Siegel. They were a couple. She was 62 years old and he was 64, and they were kidnapped in their own car. The terrorists were in the front, they put the couple in the back and drove this car into Gaza. Aviva, after 51 days, was released in one of the negotiations and was brought back to Israel. And Kit, who is 64 years old, has already been in the hands of Hamas terrorists for a year. And we don't know if he is alive or what his health condition is. So what is this car doing in Israel? This car was found by the Israeli army, abandoned next to Shifa Hospital inside the Gaza Strip. We know that many of the kidnapped people were held captive inside the hospital, and the couple probably stayed there for some time as well. So when Israel went in and found their car, they brought it back here to Israel. Aviva is still here waiting for her husband to return. A place that my family and I are very fond of is near Oz. My father lived there a long time ago, and I got to know the kibbutz. It's one of the kibbutzim that suffered the most from this massacre. And one thing that's important for us to understand is the cruelty with which all of this was done, and it was truly a planned cruelty. In Nir Oz, they went and did everything they did and killed a huge number of people. And they took this vehicle that belonged to someone from the kibbutz, took the car's trunk, and piled up bodies. Bodies, imagine the scene, which obviously I can't show you. It's filmed, but obviously here on YouTube, I can't show it to you. I don't even know if I would do that, show such terrible images, but there are images of this trunk, this car, with a pile of bodies traveling toward Gaza because they kidnapped not only living people, but also bodies. Because what's the point of kidnapping bodies? It's to deny even the slightest decency to these families, preventing them from burying their loved ones in an honorable way. It's taking away everything these people had, destroying their homes. They stole, then burned the houses, destroyed the water and sewage system in Nir Oz, burned the cars so the survivors couldn't escape. And those people who were killed and not burned, they tried to take the bodies to Gaza. And where they didn't have space to take the bodies or didn't have the strength to carry all the bodies, many of them they decapitated and took only the heads. That's the level of things that happened on October 7th. And when Israel really started to defend its population, to understand what was happening, they saw through aerial images this car driving towards Gaza. And they saw that there was no one alive back here anymore. And they didn't want these bodies to be kidnapped. And that's why Israel, what did they do? They bombed the car's engine here to stop the car. And so the terrorists fled on foot and left it behind. And at least the families were able to have the minimum, which is to bury their loved ones. So we really see the cruelty here, and it's hard to understand how there are people who don't acknowledge what happened. Here and throughout this whole region, we can see here on this side, this car here was an ambulance, the ambulance from Kibbutz Nir Oz. There's practically nothing left of it, but we know it's an ambulance. And among other things, we can see the red Star of David here. Obviously, this flag was placed here later as a tribute, but the red Star of David is the symbol of Israel's emergency system for ambulances. Instead of the Red Cross, here it's the red Star of David. And on the other side, we'll see another ambulance that was attacked on that terrible day. When the terrorists started attacking, many people looked for what they thought was a refuge. And many saw an ambulance and said, "This is a place where I can take shelter, hide." 18 young people came into this ambulance to get medical help. Some of them were already injured, and the terrorists simply fired a rocket-propelled grenade, that is, a grenade launcher. They launched a grenade here that set this vehicle on fire. This ambulance was burned, and the 18 people died here, burned alive. There's nothing left inside here. And at this moment, I have to tell the story of another group of heroes from this place, which is Zaka. So now I want to go with you all to the wall of cars, and we're going to hear now who Zaka is. Here we see a gigantic wall of completely burned cars. There are more than 300 cars here that are like this. And I think they help us to physically see a bit of the destruction and chaos of that day. And now I want to focus on the chaos. Imagine that on October 7th, no one really knew at first what was actually happening. Many people didn't know where their loved ones were. Where are my children? Where are my grandparents? Where is my husband? Where is everyone? No one knew if they had been murdered, if their bodies had been taken, or if they had been kidnapped while still alive. If they had somehow managed to escape, get a car, and hide in a forest. There are truly miraculous cases of how people managed to save themselves. And many people lost contact with their families. And in the hours, days, and weeks that followed, people really started to get a clearer idea of what was happening. I remember that on that same terrible Saturday, I came here live on the channel to tell you what had happened. And I remember saying there were 250 dead. And today, I'm back to tell you that just on that day, there were 1,145 dead, not counting all those who were killed afterward and those who were taken alive and killed in captivity. So a huge effort had to be made to find these people again, to find out if they were alive or not. And if they weren't alive, where were the bodies? There were bodies scattered all over this region and many bodies inside the cars. And this is where Zaka comes in. Zaka is a volunteer organization in Israel, and what they do is really give the last honor they can give to a person who is no longer with us. Their motto is to save what can be saved and honor what can be honored. And they came here car by car and started to see if there were people inside and began to remove the bodies, help identify them, and return them to their families so they could be buried. And in some cars, it was, in quotes, a little easier to identify that there were people. In other cars, it wasn't. Some cars had to be buried with parts of the cars together because there was no way to separate the person from the car. And in the case of this wall that we're seeing here, obviously the cars were later stacked, but they took each of these cars and had to vacuum up the human ashes. And when we talk about burned Jews, about human ashes, the first image that comes to mind is the Holocaust. And this really is the biggest massacre since the time of the Holocaust against the people of Israel. Not only against the people of Israel, but here in Israel without a doubt. And that's why they spent a month here every day vacuuming the ashes from the cars to try to identify who the people were so they could return them to their families for burial. They went through each one of these cars. And that's why each of these markings that we saw on a car has a meaning. They went and checked every last strand of hair that was there to remove and honor these people. There are markings that show who was found, if they were found, if they weren't found, but it was really such a huge and difficult job for Zaka that Zaka, which is the organization in charge of doing this in Israel, couldn't handle the work. And that's why, in the first weeks after October 7th, the people who came here to this very place where we are were archaeologists from the Ministry of Antiquities. Because things here were in such a destroyed state that they had to bring archaeologists here to help remove the human remains to be taken to the graves. And that's why among the flags we see here at this place, we see the flags of Israel, the flag of Israel's ambulance services, but also the flag of the Ministry of Antiquities and the archaeologists. The number of cars here is really frightening. When we walk here today, there are places where we keep going and we can't see the end. If we decided to stop here and tell you all the stories of each of these cars, of each of these families, we would literally spend days here telling you everything. And these are truly lives that will never be the same, of people who were murdered, kidnapped, of those who are still missing, of families who are traumatized, and each of these families deserves to have their story told. And we can't let all of this be forgotten. And that's why I think it's very important, very good, that this small area right behind us has been turned into a memorial, and it's open to everyone. You can't go inside to walk car by car like we did, but here a small part is open to everyone so that everyone can see the reality of what happened and we can remember each family. And there's one more family I want to remember with you, which is the story of this car. Here, this car, its owner was called Ben Shimoni. Ben Shimoni was in the area and he saw the beginning of the terrorist attack. He took his car, put a number of people, 8 people inside the car and rushed to safety. And then he opened the doors, got all of them to safety, closed the door and went back to where the terrorists were, to rescue more people and bring them to safety. And he does this the 3rd time he comes to rescue people. He's heading back to safety, and on the way he encounters the terrorists who start shooting. In his car while he was still on the road, he is murdered along with Gaia, whose photo we can see here, and she was also in the car. Romy was there, who was kidnapped while she was still alive. And she is there right now. The person you're hearing is still being held hostage inside Gaza, and each of these stories must be remembered as well as the families. They insist that we are here telling their stories. And one of these families is exactly the Shimoni family. The person who is here every day is his father, Raf. He comes here and tells everyone who is willing to listen the heroism of his son and everything that happened. And now I have a personal request to make to you. Don't let the memory of these people disappear. Don't let anyone deny the suffering of these families. But above all, don't let anyone ever repeat this. Terrorism must end. Unfortunately, Hamas still exists. Hezbollah continues to attack Israel. The Houthis, Iran, Qatar, and so many other sympathizers around the world. The fight against terrorism is for all of us, so be aware that we need to be fighting together. Pray for these victims, for their families, and also pray for the 101 hostages who are in the hands of the Hamas terrorists. I thank everyone who watched today, and please share this video and share the truth about Israel.